welcome to Meta Rick, episode 2. We've got the Launchvox guys here, Bob Dyce and John Miller. So excited to chat with y'all about extended reality, artificial intelligence, all of this new technical innovation happening in the world today. You guys both have been around the XR space for a lot longer than most folks. I know working with like medical simulations and demos, and have recently gone off on your own and formed your own agency. And so I'd love to start the conversation just by hearing a little bit about the agency and what you guys are doing today, and kind of what sparked the idea to kind of venture off on your own and form Launchvox in the first place.
Yeah, sure, yeah. I'll start. So, hey everybody, I'm Bob, CEO of Launchvox. Been working with John for about a decade. We work together in an agency, primarily building medical and pharmaceutical animations and interactive. And we left that to co-found Launchvox almost 2 years ago, which seems crazy.
It's crazy. It is crazy.
Anyone who knows startup life it's a wild ride. So, yeah, you asked the reason why we did it. You know, we probably ask ourselves that same question sometimes because entrepreneurship's not for everybody. But I think the big why was the opportunity in the space. Like, there's so much cool stuff we could be doing. And when you're an employee at a studio, you're handed the project to build. At this stage, we can just go pick all the stuff that we think is really interesting and kind of, you know, invigorates us, and that's what we go after. Pass it to John. What do you think, John?
Yeah, no, I mean, to add on to that, you know, Bob in a lot of ways has been a mentor to me. So when Bob's like, I'm getting out of here, I was like, I'm going with you, man. No, it was a nice transition to go from doing medical animations where the clients really knew what they were looking for, and we were very much in the anatomical space, to go where Launchvox is kind of taking on all sorts of projects that even I haven't dreamed of doing before. In a lot of ways, we get to guide our ship and get into technology that is on the cutting edge, which is really like the best part of the job. Whether it's, you know, exploring new technology in animations, I mean AI, which we're going to get into, but really it's just been exploring and solving clients' problems with a large toolbox.
And I know how crazy the startup adventure can be. Most of my career has been working with early to mid-stage startups. 2 companies ago was basically seed funding to Series A, doing the whole growth from 5 people to 45 people. Suddenly you've got company politics and like having to deal with whole new struggles that you don't when you're a couple people in a room. And so I'm wondering, like, what were some of the big transitions for you? It was I think you started Launchvox maybe about 2 years ago now. And those first like 3 to 6 months, like what were some of the biggest differences between kind of venturing off on your own versus working as a creative director or in that space for another company?
You mind if
Good question. Yeah, go for it.
So I was just thinking about this. So funny you should ask. For me, it was the isolation. You know, very much when we were at our previous company, you know, I was on a team of people, a large team, and you were surrounded by inspiration. You know, what someone was working on behind you or next to them, it was always different, and everyone had different specialties. To then go to be, you know, creative director of one, right? Like Bob's creative, and we lean on each other a lot. But really, to just be in a department, and you know, during COVID and everything, when we really launched it, we were in our rooms, you know. So a lot of that isolation was difficult, like trying to figure out how to be inspired on the reg, without, you know, having another teammate to really pull from, and grow your own, I guess, toolbox was in a lot of ways a lot of self-growth, and it was a huge challenge for me. But I would say for me, the first 3 to 6 months was like learning how to be comfortable with that and figuring out my own desires to be a creative studio.
I think about like one of the ways that we like mitigate that, or that we get around that, is like meeting people like you. So we met, I think you were at your last previous company, and you get in the room with somebody else who is like creative and innovative, and it's all of a sudden it's like you feel like you're with your tribe again, right? So even though we're at different companies, and we might have been pitching you or just like looking for ways to collaborate, and we never did like official work together, but we always knew that's like, hey, this person's out there, they're doing dope stuff in the industry, they're creative, they're innovating. So it's weird. It's almost like you make friends differently than when you're in your own company and you're just like, I don't really have to worry about that. Whatever your role is, it's a little more cut and dry. Where now we're like, it's like it could be anything. A startup can be anything. We don't have a super clear vision when we left of like, we're this, and we'll know when we arrive. It was much more of we know we don't want to work here. We've got a different idea for what our future could look like. We're creative people. We'll figure something out. Let's just go out into the wild, start meeting people, start putting content together and see what happens.
So I think it's really interesting talking about this idea of like in a startup you feel more free to kind of develop those relationships or create those connections. I think a lot of the people I know that work at much larger agencies or consulting firms, like there's more guidelines, there's more rigidity. Like if someone wanted to go off and start their own podcast, or if they just want to reach out to someone randomly on LinkedIn, it's more okay than people think it is. I think people get really caught up in their own head thinking that maybe they're going to get in trouble, maybe they're going to accidentally step on someone else's account, especially if they're in sales. It's like, man, if I'm not selling to this person, am I allowed to talk to them? Am I going to mess something up? And those are valid worries. Like they're things you should think about. You want to be a respectful business person. But for my own career, I mean, reaching out to people proactively on LinkedIn or just like trying to find people in the industry, even when I'm not trying to sell them, I'm just trying to chat with them and catch up and share ideas. It's been incredibly valuable. So it's interesting to hear you share something similar where like once you ventured off on your own, you felt more comfortable with that and kind of developing those connections. Which is funny
because we probably built our own box, right? I mean, we built a box and we put ourselves in it and then we blamed others for like, I'm stuck in here, which is like, in reality, like you could go do the stuff that you do in a startup, but something about actually taking that leap of faith and leaving like a regular paycheck lights a fire under you where like, I have to do this stuff. Like I have to network, meet people, increase my skill set, put new tools in the box and get on top of innovation, or I'm not going to be able to like eat or survive, So it's a different mentality of like scarcity breeds this like, I got to do this thing. But even that's kind of not totally true either. So it's weird that we play these head games.
Totally. It's like that. I love the way you phrase that of like putting ourselves in a box. It's like so much about life is just getting out of your own way. And especially with the metaverse and all the things we're about to dive into in a second here is like, I've found that it's such a partner forward ecosystem play. Like in order to be successful with technology that's emerging and is so new, like the pie is tiny right now. And like, yeah, we're competitive, we're fighting for those big deals. But the reality is if you see your competitor win a multi-million-dollar contract, that's good for you right now. Like if you're out there building virtual worlds and like that's a part of what you do every day, you need more companies adopting VR headsets and building virtual worlds and making that more of a norm so that it's easier for you to have those conversations and more people are going to find out about you because more people are paying attention to the industry. And so I wonder, like, have you guys, do you guys work with a lot of partners? Do you do most of your work completely on your own, or what is your approach to kind of collaboration within the space?
It's a fair question. It really depends on what we do. If it's animation, generally, like we can do that whole kit and caboodle in house, from A to B. If it's XR, like VR, AR, that's where we start to branch out a bit to some of the partners, especially for like plugins that we might want to use, especially like right now in this current sphere of AI. Like there's a lot of stuff we don't know, so there's partners out there that we can collaborate with that might understand some of that technology better, how to integrate it better. But it really varies. I would say the larger the project, the more that we pull on other people whose knowledge and window of opportunity would be better suited.
Yeah, I'd say too at our current size and status, like we are the partner. That's more times than not. It's like another group that's saying like, well, you guys are dope and you're creative and you can do this. You can bring it into the game engine or hook our technology together. So it's like this opportunity to almost get embedded in these little teams for these shorter sprint projects and just like make technology work. That's how we make payroll. We do these projects, we do these animations and these like technology implementations. Kind of behind the scenes, which we don't really talk about as much, is we put our heads together and go like, are there products? Is there IP with all these experiences we're having, like, could we build our own thing? Could we bring technologies together in a real novel way and kind of find some unmet need to plug it in and have it be our own thing? And we don't, we haven't come out with like, this is our platform or anything. That we're kind of, we were described this many years ago at the other agencies, like, you guys are like mercenaries. Like, you're hired guns that come in and like, do dirty work or whatever. Like, I was offended by it. I was like, what are you talking about? But now I think about it, it's like, present wars aside, it's like, yeah, I guess at some point you just need a hired gun to like come in and like fix a problem.
Totally.
So the collaboration is really high. And again, coming out of the agency mindset where I think we were conditioned to be like, it's zero sum, it's competitive. If somebody else will get the job, if we don't get the job, somebody else will take the client if we're not the incumbent. To like, and I don't know if it's just XR in the metaverse, but everyone is super collaborative. Everyone's sharing their ideas, and people are looking for VC, or they have funding, and they're bringing you in and talking about their stuff. And it's like, that's been really refreshing, where it's like a lot of freedom to just like try all kinds of new things. And the pace of technology, that was part of the, I think the timing of my personal reason to leave was like, I saw this like future of like the things that are going to happen in the next few years. Oh my, like I want to be a part of that on more of a like self-directed mindset than a just like, here's your list of projects to complete this week. Make sure you get them all done to spec.
It's interesting too on the partner side of things. Like a lot of how we used to be, as Bob said, conditioned. We go after the huge clients and try to get this huge job and try to build trust at the same time. But what we're really seeing, especially our small studio, it's the bite-sized engagements that build the best relationships. And like, if we go after something, like it could be really small, like, hey, we'll just help you build this module for this app. We don't want the whole app. We'll just help you in this small condition. And suddenly, we're their guy for any of their needs, and those little bite-sized jobs carry on. And even if it doesn't turn into something big, it's built a relationship. And I think a lot of what I have enjoyed since we started is that as much as they're clients, they're actually friendships and relationships of these people that have unique challenges. And when they're solved, there's this eureka that everyone gets to be a part of. So that's been really
it's the
rewarding.
Bigger pie you talked about earlier, Ricky. It's like it feels like we're just enabling the pie to be bigger so more people can get a slice, rather than like hoarding the pie or like keeping the technology like our super secret sauce. No one can see it. Like, we're pretty open, like on LinkedIn and stuff.
Totally.
Like, we make something cool. Like, we're gonna throw it out there, and if somebody asks me, well, what's the tech stack? How did you build it? It's like, here's how I built it, because we don't think that like the idea or the technology is that precious. It's like being willing to build the stuff, having the wherewithal to build something functional is really the special sauce.
Well, and it's so interesting you say that, because I think that's the direction business in general is going, right? Because I think that this idea of like leading with empathy and relationship building, community-driven business is the future of business. It's like finding people that are like-minded and share an interest, can share a mutual goal. That's really what a company is at the end of the day, right? As a company has a mission statement, they have a value proposition, and then they hire a bunch of people with different skill sets to all build together towards that shared mission, that shared goal. And a project is just an isolated step in that process, where you're not only your company, but you're hiring an agency or working with vendors to accomplish something that ties into that mission. And as an agency, one of the exciting things is you get to tap into a variety of those value propositions because you have multiple clients. And so one day you can be working with someone like a Google or like an Amazon or whatever and be working in the tech space. And then the next day you could be working with a consumer goods product or a medical device company and be telling all these different types of stories, which I know all three of us are creatives in here. And like that as a creative is like a dream job, right? It's like you get to explore all these unique stories and how to build on them. Now, what I found, I was just talking to Nate Essen the other day, who's managing the metaverse practice for Aquint Studios and kicking that off, large agency. And one of the things he mentioned when thinking about the ecosystem of the players in the metaverse, like you've got your hardware, you've got your cloud infrastructure, you've got a variety of different players in the space. But one of the most important ones is guys like you, these niche agencies that have a unique skill set of some kind. because the reality is a big brand hasn't had the time yet to build an in-house studio and have all of the expertise for XR and Metaverse and these different plays. In your couple of years at the agency so far, have you guys found a particular specialty that you like to focus on, or like a particular skill set that you bring to the table that you think sets you apart, but for why people like to work with you guys?
John's smiling. I wonder if he has something. For me, I think it's storytelling. I think it is like unpacking a complex idea and making it like known. So like you like, aha, I get it. What a great way to express something, and that works really well for products. And you know, we do a lot of med tech stuff, which is complicated, and we want to make the complicated, you know, more understandable. What does that look like? Like storytelling, that's a pretty broad term. For us, it's like we're really good at making things look good. I think that's, you know, that sounds like I'm bragging, but like people say that to us. It's like, wow, you put out this stuff, and like it comes from decades of doing pre-rendered 3D visual effects style animation pipeline that John gets in there, and now the real-time engine, and his mind goes to like making these digital films over the years, and so wanting that lighting and those particles and the vibe and the style to like be cinematic, that we're like leaning on the game engine super hard and really tweaking it super hard so that it can be the best visual it can be. And that's one part, that's a big part of storytelling. And then the other stuff is like all of these non-tangibles, like understanding what's being communicated, and is it working hard enough, and is the composition right? So it's a lot of like, comes from like almost like a film background, but we're really trying to like communicate well. And I don't know that everyone's doing that. I think sometimes it's okay to have a potato avatar and some crappy sounding text and some cheesy looking buildings, and I go like, well, why would I want to be in this town square running around? Like, what's in here?
So, yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Oh my God, what a nightmare.
I think, you know, so the question was, you know, have we found a special niche, or like where do we fit in the metaverse? Like the question of the metaverse, and so
or as a niche studio. I think where it kicked off from is when I was talking to Nate, he specifically mentioned an example of like a niche studio that's like a master of Roblox, where like they know the slang, they know the types of games that people play, and like the language of the users of that platform.
Yeah.
So if you're going to do a Roblox campaign, you probably want to use someone like that niche agency. Versus for you guys, like you obviously have a ton of medical experience and working in that field. You're creative thinkers, so you kind of have a little bit more openness in what paths you can go down. But it seems like storytelling is one of those differentiators. But that was the question, is kind of thinking about like what separates you from some of these other niche agencies.
I love the concept of the niche agency, and I think we are that. I might say that we're a niche agency who hasn't completely decided what our niche is, because we've been trying a lot of different stuff, and that adventure into startup is actually really cool.
It's a lot of fun.
It's a lot of fun, and I'll tell you, in 2 years we've seen the technology change beneath our feet. Right, we saw NFTs go nuts, and people start to ask like, well, could you mint NFTs? And then we go out and we figure out how to do it. We said, yes, we can. And then they go, okay, I'm looking for funding, and then they never get funding, and they go away. And they've had NFT projects come and say, we've got this huge, or rather metaverse projects, this huge thing we're going to build. Will you be our engineers? And we say yes, and we start down that path, and it doesn't get funding, and it goes away. And now we get AI coming in, you know, if it's NFTs and then metaverse and AI, and people are now asking, you know, can we have that avatar have a brain? And we're saying, why, yes, we can, and we hook it up and we make it work. And these ones are seeing some traction. Not to say that the other ones didn't, because a lot of people did a lot of real cool stuff in that space. So talking through it, I'm wondering if our niche isn't that we are like innovation implementation experts. So really, not to say that we're always trying to be hype boys on the cutting edge of the new thing. But
Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that.
But there's a difference between people that just get out there and talk about it, and then there's the people who are like, we'll be your architects. Like, what are you trying to build? Because technology is technology. There's always, you know, you can read a white paper or get an APK and start to hook the stuff up. We have the wherewithal to like build that and make it look good. But we're not trying to make the technology too precious. We did so much virtual reality stuff, and we've made dozens and dozens of titles, like deployed fleets of headsets for businesses at scale. And maybe for a season we identified as like, we are XR developers, but really we were still storytellers in that phase. The medium was XR. The medium could be the metaverse, and then AI might just be a set of tools that you slap on that to make avatars within that metaverse intelligent or function in some cool way.
And circling back to what Bob is saying, like, the reason I would say for us being storytellers is so important is because the process is usually the same regardless of what you're doing. You're taking something you have no idea, you're learning about it, you're becoming a pseudo-expert, and then you distill that into what is the problem? What are you trying to solve with this? And you can apply that to any industry. And medical was unique for us as a learning because it was so complicated. But what we found out of that is that you can take really any idea that's complicated and distill it. As long as you know who your audience is or what your problem trying to solve, whether that's an animation, an experience, VR, meta, like it still is answering a question, and that is a problem that has to be solved. So I look at that and I say, Bob, myself, and Ian, our partner, like that's a Venn diagram of storytellers and the tech, the creative, and the visionary space.
I totally feel that. When I was selling photo video content, even we worked across like alcohol, like automotive, like tech, all these different industries, and you're still selling the same like photo video service of like we're telling a story and capturing content and trying to put that together visually. The only thing that I found really changed industry to industry was like a little bit of the nuance. Like if you're capturing a photo of a car, there's different challenges with the reflection of the side of the vehicle and things like that. But the biggest one is just the language of like, okay, there might be some industry terms you have to pick up on, but the reality is a photo's still a photo, and being able to judge the end result and be able to handle the discovery process to figure out what we need to accomplish here is really similar. And then when I went to working in the 3D space, there's a lot of overlap. A creative brief is still a creative brief. Like whether you're doing a photo or you're making a 3D virtual world, like it's still scoping out a project. You need someone with a very similar skill set managing it and keeping it organized. It's just a creative process, and it's just storytelling at the end of the day. Something you talked about earlier was this idea that you like to dabble with technology, and I think that mindset is really important. I shout this book out constantly, but Deep Tech by Eric Redmond. He founded the Technical Innovation Office for Nike, and one of the biggest themes of that book is companies need to be tech companies. It doesn't matter if you're a product company, a service company, an airplane company, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, everything is so fundamentally built on top of technology now that you have to be constantly innovating and trying to think, how do you make a better scheduling system? How do you make a tool to make your life easier? And so the fact you're thinking about that, I think, is really valuable. I wonder, have you guys developed any tools yet, or have you seen some sort of problem in the space that you wish, like if anyone could go raise funding to solve a problem for 3D world building, like what's that tool or that feature you wish someone would have solved for?
Perfect plug.
Or maybe you have, maybe you have one that you're ready to share it.
We're building a thing now, so it's a great question. Other people are building things all the time that I'm like extremely fascinated with and very curious with, and we've been privileged to be like on all kinds of like beta alpha groups where somebody goes like, well, you guys you'll figure out how to make a cool thing with this. Will you play with our technology? And we read the papers and we build a thing, and we run it through its paces. So in those experiences and just being really just like just admiring people who are putting out all this great stuff, we've been looking for what's our thing, what should we put together. So we've been in the process. It's just been a couple weeks, so I don't want to make it sound like it's fully baked or anything, but where I think and again, I don't mean to sound uncreative, but where I think our creativity often comes is in that collaboration, in taking building blocks and combining them creatively, like existing things. Because like, I'm not going to be the guy that goes out and writes Chat GPT. That's already been written, and the thing, it costs millions of dollars to train. And then there's ASR, automatic speech recognition type stuff, like amazing technology that a lot of people are out there competing, trying to turn, speech into text. and natural sounding language and voices, and that technology is out there. And then there's avatar companies, Ready Player, me, and others that are building, MetaHumans that are building all this great stuff. We've been beta testers for all this stuff. We've been taking that technology and then combining it with face tracking and all these different things for the last 2 years. But we keep having people come back to us and say, I need some kind of a soft skills trainer of sorts. Companies do training, they do compliance training for certain things. They have to do it already, so there's already kind of a market built in. And what our solution is, I think we could automate that. I think we could take a game engine, a 3D avatar, speech to text, natural language processing like a GPT type of engine, a transformer type of engine, or some other AI module. Train it with specific domain knowledge so it knows, I am this specific type of person, I work in this company, here are my needs, here's my mood, I'm sarcastic, I refuse to take a sales call. And you build something like a soft skills sales trainer where you can go in and rehearse and practice with a bot. But it feels like what we're doing now, which is a little like a Zoom call, which we're really all comfortable with. So we brought all these existing pieces together, wrote some software to connect them. It's all modular. So as a better voice comes on, we just pull out the voice and put it in a new voice. But it's super impressive when it all works. It's like a conversational AI, avatar bot.
So if you can, so something I found is there's all these use cases when it comes to XR, and training is a big one. It's a big one, but the problem with training is HR doesn't have the same budget that a CMO is going to have or a VP of sales is going to have because they're not generating revenue. And that's just the way the world works. If you're able to generate revenue, then you're going to invest more in those programs because it's not a cost center. I do think that people and investing in people is really valuable, and these training experiences can be really incredible. But the wall I always ran into was where does the money come from to fund those programs?
Yeah.
So with what you're describing, it sounds like to me this could solve for that by having a more automated system that you could configure without needing to reproduce some crazy experience every single time. Is that kind of what you're getting at? It's like you could repurpose that system for different trainings experiences?
That's right. If you can build a system that has a base level of intellect that's as smart as, say, GPT-4, which is going to be pretty smart, and then you can, on top of that, you can stack specific domain knowledge. So now I know all the jargon for a specific type of doctor or whatever that is. You can then have reps come and talk to that. Now, that training already exists, and it's expensive, and it's 1v1. It's a trainee and a trainer. So it takes an hour of each person's time to do a role play, and a role play is kind of cringy because you're with another person and you're pretending to do a thing that's not real. So the bar's actually kind of low because you have this cringy thing that's not authentic. It's kind of wooden. That's what you've got to beat, right? And the budget is there because we already spend money on this stuff. Or some groups are already, you can do the math on how many hours they spend doing this thing. So to be able to automate that process, take one human out of the loop where it's just the trainee that gets to go in this. But then on top of that, with the way some of this AI stuff can work is you can do sentiment analysis. You can go you can analyze what was said. You transcribe everything and you analyze it. You summarize it. You go, were the right words used? Were the wrong words used? Was the attitude right? Did you do the close if it's a sales trainer?
And
so
you
you're able
add...
to Go ahead, John.
Sorry. I was going to say, and you add continuity to it. You can take that entire experience, and then you can say, now let's have follow-up. Let's say you were just talking to that chatbot, right? Like on a Zoom call. Now we want to see you write an email to that chatbot, which has kept that entire history of that conversation. Now you can email them, and they're going to respond with the continuity of what you spoke about and how likely they are to close on what you said based off of that entire experience. And you can do that 2 or 3 more times. You can try and get another meeting set up. The idea that this experience is only a one-off doesn't have to be, because everything has already been defined in these sales models. It's a certification process, so that means it's on rails to some degree. It just has to be rebuilt in a different form.
So that's what's interesting about what you just said, John, is that this seems like thinking as a salesperson, for enterprise sales, you're talking a 3 to 9 month ramp up typically to get someone full speed. Now, some of that you can't replace with training because it's just building pipeline and just knocking doors down and getting people to hear you out. But that first 3 months, especially for SMB sellers and mid-market sellers that maybe are a little bit more amateurish or a little greener, amateurish might have been a little harsh, but people that are still learning, like they're still new to the space, if you could cut down the response time where they're waiting for a dial to pick up to get their rep in, or waiting for an email to be responded to get their rep in the real world, and you could have these almost like CPUs, these AI responders, being able to do, their first 3 months worth of reps in 1 week or 1 day even, all of a sudden those reps are able to onboard significantly faster and start being productive for their business within maybe a week or two instead of within a few months. Like that is incredibly impactful if I'm understanding what you're saying, right?
Yeah, and we're not like pinpointed on what the use case is, or we have our ideas on where we think we can sell it with the people we know, but what you're describing is tangential and is yet another good idea with the exact same technology stack, which is, we're talking more about like in the medical industry, there's compliance training that has to happen, like regulated. And we started a little more broad, which was like, well, maybe it could just be any training for anything. So I like that to start to do something like focused and a little more defined. But what you're describing is where this stuff is going, where we could have these bots that then in that month of training that they're doing with you, they're learning about you and they're changing, so that, that grows. And like John said, like the multiple modalities of it where, just as a anecdote, I took this bot and I trained on top of GPT. It's like, under no circumstance will you take an appointment with me, or will you trial my product? And then I just started hitting questions, and it refused me every way under the sun. And it was like fun to just like, well, I know it's not going to break its own rule, but it's like, what good practice to just have. And the objections it was coming up with, I'll give it to you for free. I'll drive it to your place. You know what I mean? Like it was amazing to watch this thing refuse. But there's nothing to say that if I discover some hidden need, and I don't know that as the trainee, but the programmers will have known that. Then I unlock it, and now it's open. It's open to listening a little more, and it'll maybe allow me to send some more information. That next mode might go out of like a chat, and it goes into like, I am now, as a trainee, have to write an email, which ChatGPT is great with, and attach a PDF. And if I don't do that, or if I do that, that's going to now trigger an opportunity. I'll get an email back and say, yeah, I'll see you next Tuesday. Shows up on my calendar. Tuesday, I hop into a Zoom. And again, we're not talking about XR at this point. We're just talking about like WebRTC. We're just you and me on our computers. You get on another Zoom chat, and now that thing is in a different state of mind because it has received that information. And we've now taught it that it's a little more open to hearing what you have to say. So you start to kind of unpack, like, it's like psychology is involved in, like, well, what is the sales cycle? And what does a salesperson go through? And how do we stress them out and get those reps in so that when they can hit the ground running faster? You save somebody a lot of money, you can charge a lot of money for a product. That's where we see the value in this thing, which the eyebrow went up, and we were like, okay, maybe we should be using our avatar technology, our game engine technology, our 3D, and our storytelling into some kind of tool set that saves people money and creates this like cool experience that couldn't have been done before the advent of modern AI.
Absolutely.
So with these GPT models that I'm seeing, like we're seeing a ton of spinoffs come very quickly. And this is another thing Nate and I talked about yesterday. I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of overlapping topics episode to episode, just new perspectives, new people to talk about it with. But one of the things that I saw is the whole do not pay thing. I don't know if you've seen this, but it's a company that's doing legal AI. And they've already been using it to fight like traffic tickets and stuff. But now they're offering $1 million for a lawyer to wear AirPods and basically copy what the AI says in ChatGPT in a Supreme Court case. And they're trying to get a ChatGPT AI engine to basically say all of the legal words to argue a case to the Supreme Court.
Is that allowed? Like, I mean, if you
That's
have
a great question. I mean, if the lawyer and the client both say it's okay, I imagine that it's probably okay from a legal standpoint.
I'm imagining it's the lawyer's reputation or his, they're like have passed the bar in their state. There's something on the line for that lawyer.
Yeah.
But it's a great promotional kind of gag too.
Well, so that's where I think the lawyer has to be okay with it. The client has to be okay with it. Because one of the biggest issues with autonomous vehicles, and I think it'll be the same with most AI that we talk about, is who's liable if something goes wrong, right? And if you're going to say, oh, it's the AI's fault, you can't do that because there's not enough precedent. We don't have regulation around when you can blame the AI. So the person using it is going to be the one who has to get blamed. I would imagine. I'm not a lawyer. This is not legal advice. This is just kind of how I picture it going. But yesterday, Nate was telling me this idea about a medical use case where one of his friends was recently diagnosed with a disease. And so she started describing her symptoms and what she was feeling to ChatGPT, and ChatGPT diagnosed her accurately in seconds every time she described what she felt, versus going through doctors was a much different process to get to the same diagnosis. It was the easiest process she'd ever gone through to be able to get the right answer.
That's amazing.
It's absolutely incredible. And
we're just scratching the surface of this stuff, and that stuff's all there's total a legal ethical minefield that we're all wading into. But and again, no medical advice, but that exists, and it doesn't surprise me. It makes you realize people will form camps this is terrible, doctors' jobs are at risk, lawyers' jobs are at risk, or doctors and lawyers will be able to do more. They'll be able to better serve a broader group of people because they're going to have this superpower to wield.
Well, so John, I know you have a lot of thoughts on this. That's why this is part of why I'm so excited about this conversation. I'm glad we're getting into it. Is on LinkedIn a few weeks ago, I saw you comment on this post about the whole artist movement of anti-AI that's been going on, and I read through. You were commenting so thoughtfully, like you weren't being an asshole, you weren't being horrible about it. You were just being very blunt about hey, I have questions. I'm curious to understand how you got to this conclusion. Here's some counterpoints that might be worth considering. And you were really good at poking the bear without being a dick about it. And I loved it. And I read through almost every comment you put on there. And so I'd love to unpack what your thoughts are on this. Is AI generative art stealing? Is it not? Is it going to replace all the artists? What do you think?
First, big disclaimer on this, right? I just want to say that I in no way endorse any art or any artist being
how funny would it be if that was it?
Right?
I don't endorse any art. I'm just kidding.
No, you're good. You're good. But I do want to say though, there is a lot that AI is doing that is bringing completely new people into this conversation. When I think of what AI can do right away is accessibility. If I don't have hands, or if I'm a paraplegic, but my head and my mind and my brain and my mouth and everything is capable of talking to a voice generator that then is fed into an AI, I am now able to cast a vision. So when I hear someone say that my skills are being taken away because AI is scraping information. And again, I'm no expert on how AI is taken. I know there's different methodologies and there's different models. But I have to ask the question, what makes your creativity so unique versus someone else's? And if there was two people and they had the exact same vision, let's say they're twins, and they both visualized the exact same thing, but only one person had the skills to paint it on the canvas and another person had to direct three people to make that same vision, are we saying that the person that used their skills is the only artist? Because then what are we saying our imagination is? Are we only tied to what we can do with our hands? To me, I say no. We are communicators, and we can communicate to a computer the same way we can communicate with our hands. And so accessibility is a big way I look at this as a footprint for other people that haven't been able to get to contribute, or used to be artists and lost the skills to do so, can now get back into what they want to do. Because this is directed. If I have AI right now in my Discord chat, Midjourney, right? It's sitting there. Is it generating art for me right now on its own? No, it's because I haven't asked it to. I haven't directed it to do anything.
It's a tool.
It's a
tool. And that's something that technology, like Naval Ravikant talks about this all the time, is like technology is leverage. Like that's why getting good at code or understanding how to build technology is so important, is it gives you more leverage. You can accomplish more things with less resources. Like it's basically democratizing certain skill sets. That's why the whole do not pay thing for law is so interesting. Scary in some ways. We'll try and avoid that for now. But where it's interesting is like it democratizes this very specialized, expensive skill set. Like for you to become a master of law requires years and years of training, going into massive debt to develop those skill sets. Or you have to outsource it and pay someone who's gone through those years and that amount of debt to get paid enough to now where they're worth it. Now you can't afford their time anymore. So all of a sudden, if you have an AI tool that you can pay a fraction of what you need to pay to get the same result back, that's a net positive. That is a good thing for people who can't afford those legal services. That's just one example, but I mean, it's no different than like pickaxes and physical tools that allow us to accomplish more with our hands than we could with not being, gorillas with massive strength, like we aren't the strongest animals in the world, but we develop tools to give us more strength. And so that's kind of how I see it, is similar to what you're describing, is it's like it's a tool in your toolkit as an artist, and it opens that art to more people that couldn't master the physical of that one thing. They can just start taking more and more of their creativity into the world. I love that. I love that vision.
Some people are going to use tools in like uncool ways.
Absolutely.
Totally.
Some people are going to use a pickaxe and they're going to hit somebody with it. Somebody is going to say, make me a Banksy, and then they're going to go, hey, I made this. This is me. This is my creativity. And it's like, no, that's AI. And I think we got to call out the people who are just outright uncreative and copying. And then there's other people that are coming up with stuff that's like, that's just super cool. And like, it's like if you think about the lawyer thing, it's like that's a great example, because like what kind of lawyer could in a millisecond could look at all of the history of cases and come up with this really great option to follow. It's like that's beyond what a human can do. Just like when the chess robot beat Kasparov, it's like it's looking at a million possible moves in a moment, but its only objective was like win. With art, it's kind of like I can look at a million of artists rather than a million chess moves, and I can, take some of this and some of that. And it's so like black box abstract, this latent space where all this information is, and we don't really know what it's pulling in, and it never does the same thing twice. And it scares us because it's like sometimes it really just looks like straight up ripping somebody off. But then other times it's just like this brilliant thing that's never existed before. It's just inspired by a bunch of things, which is how we work as humans. I could copy a Picasso and tell people it was mine, but we just remove the I had to paint the thing. So that's the barrier of entry. That barrier's gone. So now people who were going to copy are still going to copy. People who are creative are going to find a way to really extend the use of that tool to something unique.
I also think about the lens of who we are as humans, right? Like B.F. Skinner, this psychologist, he used to say that, or used to say because he's dead, but he said that we are who we are because of the environment that we lived in, the habitat we exist in, that molds who we are. It's impossible to be completely existential from that, right? So to me, that's how I view art. Like we are completely reflecting what we have experienced in our minds based off how we've lived. That is a footprint that is unique to every single person on this planet. So what I direct a Photoshop to do for me or Midjourney, that's going to be unique to my experiences in my life that I wanted to do. So I consider the same thing about how images are scraped. The idea that people say, well, they looked at those images without my permission and they stored that data. Because it's not taking those images and clipping them together like a copy and paste or a kit bash. It uses that as data that's stored somewhere else, but not those images, right? Well, isn't that what we do every day with when we look at something, our brain imprints that? Like when we create mood boards, we're pulling from our environment, our existence, everything that we've experienced that lives in our brain. Like I can't credit, every single person I've seen that inspired me to do a piece of art that was given to me, but my eyes scraped that information and put that data in my brain.
Totally, and
thing.
that's all our brains do, right? Like we associate, like our brains don't remember things chronologically. We remember things associatively, right? Like it's not this happened then that happened. It's this happened while all these things were around me at this stage in my life, based on the reaction of these other things that happened to me. Like that's how our brains just process information in general. And that's part of why we're building this tool to do that. Is the whole point of artificial intelligence is it's a lot of psychology. It's a lot of understanding how our brains work and how do we create something that's able to process at that same level, if not significantly better. And then taking these niche tools that are able to do it through text communication or through visual communication. And I bet personally, I think the brainstorming process is the most valuable thing to come from this that I've experienced so far. Like, there's an interior design tool where like this whole painful process for interior designers is the back and forth in that first month or so of wasted time, wasted money for the client, this struggle of trying to pull out what's in the client's brain of what they want to do with this environment in this space. And if you can let the client just rant at an AI for a while and then generate a ton of ideas, and then an interior designer comes in at the end of that process to now say, okay, based on your favorite images that came out, this is what's possible, this is what's not, this is the cost point if you want to do this versus that, and then hone in together, that's a better process regardless of how it functions, right? Now I've got a more tactical question. Do you guys use any of these tools in your day-to-day yet? Like, I know they're so new and everyone's talking about them, they've blown up the whole internet, right? But in your day-to-day as creatives, have you started implementing these generative AI tools into your process?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Most
Early on when it
brainstorming.
came out, brainstorming for sure. Early on when it came out in, what was it, June? Because this is still fresh. That's what blows my mind. Like, we're not even a year away from when it was basically publicly beta for everyone to get access to. I know AI art's been around for a while, but this is still relatively new. So as soon as like June rolled around and we got our first like mid-journey access, I started bringing it into our storyboard process almost immediately. And that was giving us ways of visualizing, because I don't necessarily have great artistic skills when it comes to my hands. I shake a lot. I have to use Procreate and a ton of undos and stabilization to even get good line contours. So Midjourney, though, like it takes the ideas and it just implements it. So we could take that and we could put, when we were like coming up with some of our social media ideas, we could put that all in a storyboard of how we want to tell that process. Which, at the end of the project, anyways, almost all's creative that develops the end result. It's not like that's put on a wall or given to the client. It's not like they're like, check out these storyboards, bro. Like, that was just creative pollution that went away afterwards. So I don't understand why anyone would be butthurt about that process when it's just, an implementation of creative pipelines to develop the visual that is collaborative by humans the entire way. So. Yeah, absolutely. We use it every time.
Like, to be able to quickly get your bad ideas out is useful. And I'll say, it's funny because I think about it. I vacillate back and forth. Or there's some days where it's like, oh, this AI art, that just makes me want to art harder. That just makes me want to be creative and like do something that it can't do. Like I'm offended by it, challenged by it, motivated by it. And then some days I just use it. I'm just like, yeah, I just need this quick thing, and I don't want to like get out my pens or whatever. Like, I just need a line drawing. So like, it's a tool. Like, you use it when you want to use it, and in other days, same thing with ChatGPT. I think it can be really lazy if you just let it write all your stuff, and you're going to lose the ability to like craft good sentences. So I find myself like I could use it some days, but I just write. Other days I'm like, just like give me a thing, and it's just, here you go, sir. And maybe I just then curate and craft and kind of fix it and stuff like that. But I'm not like hard, like I'm always on or I'm always off. It's like, depends on the mood and what I want to do and how much it matters.
So this is another hot topic with the AI stuff lately, is education. Like, New York's already setting regulation to ban ChatGPT from universities and schools and stuff. Now, I tweeted about it pretty quickly, saying like, this is reminding me of the cell phone and how we used to ban that from schools. But like literally, like with my age group, it's like between junior high, when they were taking your phones away if they were out in class, by the time I was a junior in high school, they were encouraging you to pull your phone out and use it. It became a part of the education process instead of a hindrance to the education process. And so I think these AI tools will go through a similar evolution, where they're going to start to be a part of education, not a thing that's banned by education. But I wonder if there are risks. I don't think the risks are talked about often enough. It's like, to your point just now, it's like you make an active choice not to use it for everything because you think it'll make you speak less well or write less well. Like, is that a real risk? Like what does the future look like if we take it to that extreme where no one writes on their own at all anymore? Do people just get really good at visionary statements? Like everyone speaks in prompts?
Well, I'll tell you first, I recently met with a local college group, like, you know, they were in the design department, pulled me in like, hey, can we talk to you? Like, will you be like our AI liaison? Like, we're freaked out and education moves slowly. And they were only thinking about like generative art. And I was like, I think this is going to affect the whole school, the whole college. So if you did, you know, this is months ago, but even then they were like, I just read an Atlantic article and I guess I should start paying attention to AI. It's like, oh yeah, it's going to change. Like next semester, but curriculum takes years to generate and all this, and they're not even thinking. It's like it might generate your curriculum for you. So that, as an aside, the risks are that we turn into the people of Wall-E, right? That's one argument. You know, and on the other hand, it's like, and this, I'm borrowing this. I probably read this on LinkedIn today. Someone was like, it's like when we brought calculators in, we changed how we taught math.
I just saw this a second ago.
And then what was the second analogy? I think was like, well, when we
it was Google for search, and
now we don't need to know facts, right? Because we Google the fact. We know how to ask the question to get what we need. We don't have to memorize all of these facts. And like it or not, that is changing intellect, where we are very broad. We have access to so much stuff at our fingertips. Where generations past, it was whatever you had in your head. So, you know, from a diversity standpoint, there are people with disabilities that are lifted up through this, and there are people probably with supreme intellect who are made equals with people who have Google, right? So, at any time there's change like this, you're going to get thrashed. But there's probably some real risks that people will get lazy about certain things and won't work hard to craft, and it's a little bit like taking a photocopy of a photocopy. If nobody's making new art with traditional means to scrape and to train the AI, what does it become in 50 years? Will there be new movements and stuff? Those are the fears or the risks that are put out there. I don't think that's going to be true, and I'm always like a defeatist about it. Like, well, it's like yelling at a volcano. You know, like I'm going to sue the volcano. It's like that volcano's coming down the mountain. Like, what can we really do to stop a force of nature so powerful that's kind of blown its lid and shown itself to be, you know, flowing down at us? Like, I think we probably should just like move out of its way or learn how to coexist.
Yeah. Well, and the wild thing is like this could be a stepping stone, right? Like where like the way I thought about AI before seeing these practical tools, and that's one of the things that's so crazy, is that I've been talking about this stuff for years, and now that it's in front of us and we have all these practical AI tools that everybody has access to now, it really changes the conversation, because now everybody starts to see like, wait, this is a real thing I can use. It's not just a big scary sci-fi thing, and that totally shifts the lens on it.
Totally. Kind of a genius move to give ChatGPT out to everybody, right? And have everyone go like, oh, dang, it'll write that boring email for me? Well, maybe it's not so
well
bad.
done, OpenAI. I mean, I was talking to my buddy about it, and now their company's using it for all their product descriptions, right? Like, all of a sudden, you can scale tons of different basic workflows and just make your company run more effectively with it. But it still is very scary, this idea that, like, if artificial intelligence gets to a certain point, like, we're basically replacing our species with something new. And that's where the Neuralink thing becomes interesting, like talking about kids getting lazy, not being able to think for themselves or write for themselves or communicate. I mean, you put a Neuralink chip in their head and they won't need to anymore, right? Because everybody else will be thinking at the same speed that they are, and you just will be one with the ChatGPT. Like your brain will be doing all of that arithmetic, right?
There will always, I think, need to be, to some degree, fact checkers. And I'll provide an anecdote. And this is just of GPT-3, so it's about to be exponentially more powerful. So it'll be better at this. But one visualization we were working on recently was California's been in a significant drought, and they keep a log of all of their reservoirs and the percentage that they are at. So I took that information and I tried to find out what is the entire capacity needed to fill all the reservoirs back up to full. And I got, this huge measurement, and I fed it over to ChatGPT, and I said, okay, now I want to visualize this, give me a cubic volume of how much liquid we're talking about here. And it gave me it broke it down in math and everything the way, your math teacher would to see the result. It looked perfect. So then Ian and I, we reviewed it, and it was completely wrong. Like, not even close.
Confidently incorrect.
Yes. But the thing is, like, the math and the formula that it chose to follow was exactly the right way, but the answer it did, it was like 2 plus 2 plus 2 is 12. It's like, no, it's not. It's 6, dude, and I'm going to tell you it's 6, and you're like, you're right. It is 12. And it's like, no, I told you the answer. And I told it 3 times. And every time it was like, you're right, my apologies. It is the wrong answer. So to me that says, like, no matter how far we go, and when we talk about, like, cars replacing horses, then there needed to be mechanics. I think what we're going to see is, like, back-end fact checkers or accuracy keepers of AI. Because it's fallible, really. Like, it's learning from the humans, which are a species of incorrect information. So
I love that analogy of, like, cars replace horses, but then there were mechanics, right? Because everyone talks about the loss of jobs, but everyone forgets, like, people have always found a way to fill that time. Because every new innovation comes with new issues, and then you have to have a way to solve those new issues with new solutions. And people will always filter in. And yes, there's an overlap. During great waves of innovation, there's people that fail to adopt and learn fast enough, and that's just a part of human nature. It's just a different type of evolution now than it was 100 years ago, than 100 years before that. One of the craziest ones I just learned about like a month ago is when the train started, people thought that human beings would die if they moved faster than 35 miles an hour. I don't know how I went my whole life without hearing that. Like, literally a month ago, it came up in some LinkedIn feed or something. That is bonkers. Like, we fly now. We fly. And back then, people thought if you went 35 miles an hour, you would die.
There's people on the space station going 17,000 miles an hour right now.
Yeah, we have billionaires launching themselves to space, not even to go to the moon, right? Like this is crazy to think the type of things. And that makes it difficult because all of us that are sitting at this edge of innovation, it's like, I think it's important for us to have some skepticism. Like, we need to be smart and cautious about some of the things that we innovate. It's like, because we can do it, should we do it, is like a question product developers need to be asking. But at the same time, like, we have to remember, like, we don't have all the information, and it's hard for us to know what is and what is not possible without it actually existing and without us actually being able to interact with it, right?
Yeah. Kind of a question for you, Ricky. So we were all pretty hot developing metaverse technologies. And metaverse, for a number of reasons has, I would say, in my experience, has cooled a little bit because there's a new hotness in town, which is the AI. But still a very cool technology, very viable. If we could flip it, and we would have had AI first, generative 3D models, and avatars that could, be embodied with really interesting personalities to populate these empty worlds, would it have been different?
Well, what's interesting is I think that's still going to happen. So what's interesting to me is, like, everyone's now talking about, like, what NVIDIA's doing with Nerf, right?
Yeah.
And, like, this idea of being able to use AI to generate 3D models at scale, like, make it way easier to digital twin things. The idea of using something like ChatGPT for CPUs to be more lifelike, almost like Westworld caliber CPUs. And then the idea of these generative visualizations to be able to speak a reality into existence, literally be able to describe it and have it appear in front of you. And if you look back, like, a month or two after Facebook did the rebrand to Meta, Zuck did a demo of that. Like, he was already talking about, like, hey, this is an island. I'm going to change the sky. I'm going to add clouds. Like, he was already talking about this idea of generative 3D modeling based on speech. So I think those things are all being thought about. I think that the two technologies will merge very seamlessly together. And honestly, like, my dream state of it is I'm a huge, like, Rick and Morty fan, and, like, I grew up watching stuff like Sliders and, like, all these, like, infinite realities and this concept of endless possibilities of what worlds could be. And, if we have infinite simulations of infinite realities being developed by AI, that's pretty much the same thing, right? And we could legitimately become explorers of infinite realities. And that's, there's a little bit of a tangent, but this is a joke my friend used to make in college all the time. Like, we were like, college drunk idiots, as most 19-year-old boys are, right? And he would always joke that this is like when SpaceX was really early in trying to do what it does. We're like, it's not unrealistic that in our lifetime we could be space pirates. Like, that's a real thing. That's a real thing we could probably do if we wanted in our life. That's wild. That's wild.
Something you had said, like, hit something that I was thinking about the other day. You were talking about simulations. It's one way to knock off the meaning of life, as far as, like, are we in a simulation? Because
Probably.
the idea is that we can't simulate ourselves because it would prove that the confines of our own simulation would exist. So as soon as we were able to completely simulate mankind one-to-one, that would be proof that we are not in a simulation.
Most likely, yeah.
Right? That's what Elon Musk believes anyway. So I'm going to take that to heart.
Simulation theory is super interesting to me, and it's funny because my mindset on it has always been the same, which is like, who cares if we're in a simulation or if we're not? Like, regardless, this is my life, whether I'm code or I'm not code. There's a really good, I don't know if you guys follow Kurzgesagt on YouTube, but it's a great channel for, there's like two ways of getting information, right? There's like breadth of information and depth of information. Kurzgesagt is my favorite channel for getting a really basic understanding of very complex things. So all the videos are like 10 minutes. They're extremely dense. They kind of dive into things like simulation theory and like what would the world look like a million years from now or a million years ago and stuff like that. But they give you enough info for you to think of questions and like be able to like be knowledgeable enough on it, And their simulation theory one's a great breakdown of how possible it is and how close we are to all of that different technology. And now working in this industry and getting to peek a little bit behind the curtain of what's going on with some of the big players in the space, like, we're pretty damn close. It's expensive. It's very expensive to run it right now, but it's pretty close.
Could solve some problems with that, or make
For
some
sure.
problems.
I mean, yeah, like we said, all innovation comes with creating more issues, right?
That's right.
But hey guys, this has been an amazing conversation. I'll definitely be happy to run this back with y'all at some point, whether it's for the podcast or not. I love talking to you guys as always. Whenever I wrap these things up, I just want to give you a chance to plug something. If you have a specific project you're working on, or if you just want to shoot the website for people, or wherever people can find you or learn more about what you're working on, or if you have anything you want to shout out, this is the opportunity.
Awesome. So we're Launchvox. That's like launching a rocket, and then Vox, V-O-X, launchvox.com. And then we do a lot of stuff on socials. We're on LinkedIn a lot, just participating, putting content out there, taking the latest innovation and throwing it forward. So follow us on LinkedIn or check out our website.
And you'll see sometimes that we do some stuff that is not very serious at all. And I encourage you to see it.
We don't take ourselves too seriously. We have a lot
We
of
try
fun
not
with
to.
it.
Yeah.
No, I highly recommend following both of these guys on LinkedIn. I honestly think the reason I found out about Launchvox was I don't even know who it was. Like, some senior marketer that I follow was like shouting y'all out in the early days of the agency. And I was like, I wonder who those guys are. And then I looked you both up, saw you both came from the same company and moved out. And I was like, that sounds like they've got a cool story. I'm from Sacramento area. They're from Sacramento area. We gotta know each other. And now I've been following you for, I think, a year. And the content you put out is great, man. Like, some of it is lighthearted and fun. Some of it's just experimenting with creating fun art on the side. Some of it's stuff you're working on for your clients. Like, I definitely recommend anyone interested in the stuff we've been talking about today. These are great guys to be following.
Thanks, Ricky. That's high praise, man. For real. I
Appreciate it, man.
I always love hearing that. So thank you.
Awesome. On that note, we're gonna go ahead and call it. And until next time, guys.
Take care.
Thanks.